Welcome back to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. I'm Jason Balin from Hard Money Bankers. So next to me, actually sitting next to me, not across from me in Zoom, Ian Horowitz from Equity Warehouse. What's going on today, Ian?
Nothing, man. I was able to get out and take the drive down. You guys have heard before, we love doing these ones live in studio. We definitely get a better dynamic with our guests, and I'm actually excited for today's guest. But as always, we are the number one podcast in the universe still, right? I just checked. We're still the number one podcast in the universe.
Number one.
And if you guys get any value out of this, please feel free to share it or leave a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this, because that's how this show grows, and we bring in people that are actually doing deals, that are actually in real estate, and not have just gurus coming through the front door. So
yeah, let's bring in our guest. He's been waiting patiently with us. Damon, welcome to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you guys for having me. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, man, you took the drive down from Pennsylvania too.
I did. Just out of a little town, Exton.
Yeah, did you come down 95? Probably down 95.
Came down 95. It's always been a love-hate relationship with me coming down to Baltimore, because there's like 15 different ways to get here, and I've always seemed to pick the absolute worst way to get here.
Well,
so it was beautiful, construction and all.
Yeah, anything with 95 on it. If you live in the Northeast Corridor, 95 is the worst road known to man. And then you got the beltways around Baltimore and DC, which are exponentially worse. So
horrendous.
Yeah.
Horrendous.
So either way, we brought Damon down from Storage Shield, and he's one of our vendors that we deal with on our storage side of our business. We've had a lot of good talks, and we've said, hey, man, we do this podcast. We bring in real people that are doing real deals and real vendors. Why don't you come by and talk about tenant insurance? And some people are going, what the heck are we actually going to talk about? But you got a really cool story of how you got started. So, I mean, you want to kind of give us a background of how you got started into real estate?
Yeah, I am 15 years strong now in storage, and I've always talked about how I would not be here today if not for my wife, because I was in a parking lot. I used to work with QVC, and I was working the call center and trying to figure out my next step in QVC. And the CEO of the company went on a cruise to Greece with his family for 10 days, came back, and day one told 300 plus of us that we're being fired in 2 months.
Jesus.
So I'm in a parking lot going, well, now what? And I had an opportunity. Someone had mentioned about storage, and I was on the phone with my wife, and I'm like, I can't do this. It's self-storage. Like my experience with self-storage was, I was a teenager, and we had stuff that was stored, and some old fat toothless guy was managing a site that got our stuff stolen. Right.
Yeah.
That was always storage to me. So I had kind of fought it. Fast forward a few months, at that time I had said, Amy, I don't think I'm going to do this. I don't. And I was doing another job, and my former boss at QVC had been looking for me, because she had said when my last day, she goes, I'm going to find you someday, because wherever I land, I want you with me. And she was creating a call center for a company called You Store It, which everybody today knows as CubeSmart.
Yep.
And that was how I got my career started. I helped build their call center. I took the first call, was part of making the first reservation. And I've always been, you give me a path, I'll make something happen. I've always been that guy. I did it in sports forever. I've done it into my adult life. Just tell me what you need me to do, and I'm going to get it done. And so that was kind of my thought process with the call center. And I am very, jovial, and I make people laugh, but I'm always just tell me what you need me to do. And about 10 days after taking the first reservation, the head of operations came to me and said, we have an opportunity for you. How they did it was great. We have an opportunity for you. You're not going to get paid more, but it's going to give you experience. And I went, well, experience I can use. And it was to create and develop this lead generation program, i.e. what Sparefoot has done forever. Sparefoot actually came into play about 3 months after I got this opportunity. And it was to build a lead generation. At the time, You Store It was getting 100,000 plus hits a month to our website. We had 375, 4 stores. So we weren't all over the place. We were in certain markets. We had a lot, but what do you do with leads you get and you have nothing to do with them? Well, we were just saying, okay, sorry, we don't have a store there. Goodbye. So my program was called the You Store It Network, and it was all about selling leads and reservations using our call center and just talking to owner operators. And I ended up doing that with them for about 2.5, 3 years. And one of my clients was a company called PFG Capital out of York, PA. They're going to kill me when I tell them they find out I screwed that one up. But out of York, PA, and they had just become a client. We always talked about, we would spend 15 minutes talking about everything else and 2 minutes about like the job at hand. And they had met me at the SSA trade show in Charlotte in an airport. And they were explaining to me, hey, you've always been very upfront. You've introduced us to people. You seem to know a lot of people for being such a short time in storage. We're creating a tenant insurance program. We'd love if you could help us find a salesperson. And it was at a time when I realized, you know what? I love working with a REIT, but there's only so far someone like me is going to go within a REIT, right? And
Sure.
What is my next step? And I said, I had let them know I'd be interested in learning more about this. And if you're telling us you'd be interested, we need to have you interview. And a week later, I'm interviewing for a job. 3 weeks later, they make me the Northeast sales director for StoreSmart Tenant Insurance. And that is really where my career trajectory just kind of took off, because I went from working with a REIT, which is a more controlled environment. They weren't quite sure what to do with me at times because I'm not the typical, corporate mindset.
Right.
I will tell anybody. I would tell the CEO, as much as he didn't really like people talking to him, I would tell him good morning. I'd walk through, tell the office good morning. I was very open and just jovial. And StoreSmart was like, listen, you are who you are. We need you to just be Damon, and you're going to go out, you're going to talk about our product. And that really took off for a decade plus. We ended up in 2019 buying our main rival, Bader Insurance, at that time. And the same day that we bought Bader, Storable ended up buying us. And then I was off to, okay, well, now it's the next step, right? What am I going to do with this company? And I was with Storable about 2 years, and I learned, Storable's probably not going to want to hear any of this from this side. I don't really talk about why I leave a lot. And it wasn't anything personal. As a company, they did, what Storable's created is amazing.
It's insane.
It's amazing. And it's a powerhouse. And they bought the 2 top software programs at the time to build around, right? Nothing against Sparefoot, but Sparefoot's always been there. SiteLink and Storage were the softwares that I only ever dealt with, right? If you weren't going to deal with one, you were going to deal with the other, because
Right.
they were the 2. Now, we've had software programs come into place since that are really going to be what holds Storable accountable for how they're dealing with people on the software side. And I think they need that, but I also think the industry needs other answers, right?
Yep.
Sure.
But I realized early on, hey, listen, I'm a veteran in the industry. I've been doing this a long time. I don't know if my place is going to be with this company moving forward. And it started wearing on me, and things that happened behind the scenes that I kind of looked at and said, well, I'm not changing who I am, not because I think I'm better than what was being offered, but just, I am who I am. Right. And I had an opportunity to leave. That is my one great career business mistake. I went for to work with a company in storage for 6 months, and it was just the worst decision I could have made. But it was kind of my ticket of, here's my next step. It's a career move. And 6 months later, I'm finding myself going, wow, what have I done? Like, what have I done to my family? Like, I can't believe I did this. And at that moment, just as life happens, and I've been fortunate, I've had these things happen for me a few times in my life. My business partner now, John Manus, actually called me out of the blue to check in on me and just see how he can help me on an operation standpoint. He had just sold 15, storage facilities, and wanted to help, me, because he'd always said, Damon, I don't have my career without your help. And anybody will have, I help everybody. I don't care. I don't expect anything. And John, he goes, I want to help you. And I went through 30 minutes of just ranting about, I don't know why I joined this company. It's a bad move. I don't make this mistake. And he goes, I'm done talking. And I mean, it was profanity, everything. I had lost it, right? It was the one time I finally just hit. And he goes, this is a great conversation. And I go, did you not just hear anything that
Right.
I said? He goes, Damon, 13 years ago, I lost my job, and you are the only friend that I had in storage that called every single person that you knew. He goes, I don't know why anybody would do that. He goes, but you did. He said, and you got me an opportunity with a company He goes, I'm looking for an operations position because I don't know how to not work. And you get me an opportunity to talk to someone to become their chief operating officer. He goes, that's you. He goes, that change, that job gave me the opportunity to be my own boss and own my own stores. He goes, I just sold 15, facilities. I don't have that without you. And I want to pay you back. And I'm like, what does that mean? Pay me back? Like, what are you doing? He goes, I want to make you a partner in this tenant protection program that we started, 2+ years ago. And I'm like, you want to do what? He goes, I want to give you a partnership in my company. You'll be the face of it. You'll be our CEO. He said, but I don't have any of this if not for you. And you helped. And I told him then, and I will still say now, John Manus is an amazing human being. And I've never known anyone who will work as hard and listen and watch and will be vulnerable while at the same time being arrogant in a positive way. Right. But that's how, if you're successful, that's kind of how you have to be.
I mean, he's the one that does wear a pineapple suit jacket around most of the shows. I give the guy credit. He walks around with pineapple.
He knows marketing.
Pinnacle Properties.
There you go.
He is amazing at what he does, but he felt the need and he wants to take care. And he has taught me a lot. I will tell you, there are things about myself that I didn't know. There are things about myself, you need people that will hold you accountable, but you need people that are willing to give you the opportunity to be who you are.
Sure, that's being a good leader and recognizing what you have in someone and being able to motivate them, right? Like Jason and I have talked about it a few times of like, Michael Jordan's going to get coached completely different than his son who's playing basketball is going to get coached, right? But you need a good leader who's going to recognize that and say, okay, I'm going to coach Damon in one way. I'm going to coach Jason in another. I'm going to coach Ian in a different. And I think too many people come out. We used to see this in the fire department a lot. It's a shotgun approach of like, this is it. Like we were shooting the target with the shotgun and what we hit with the BBs lands and everything else that falls off, screw it, we'll shoot it again, right? And I think being a good leader takes like, okay, I need to treat people sometimes differently in how I motivate or lead them. And it's good that he recognizes that. But
well, it's been good because as step by step, you learn a lot about yourself. So when I started in storage, here I am working with a REIT and understanding a corporate culture. And, there are certain things that you should do and certain things that you shouldn't do. And that was the first real, I'm in my early 30s and I'm like, yeah, I probably shouldn't do that one. I need to probably not be as much Damon as some people want, and I allowed it to kind of control what I did while still, when I was out and about talking to owners, I got started. I knew nothing about storage. So I have this marketing program. I have no marketing degree. And I'm asked to try to talk to owners about selling them leads and reservations. I had no idea what to do. So in-house, I'm learning, okay, you got to be controlled. You have to do this, you have to do that. And, kind of creating plans and not doing a great job at it, but just being a one-man show, it worked. And by meeting owners and operators in the industry at that time, they helped me grow because they would introduce me to more and more people. Now, a gift that I have is I remember almost all my conversations, which sounds ridiculous after 15 years. And the day that skill goes away, I am so screwed. But I've been able to remember these conversations. So I will be the one that will tell you, hey, yeah, I remember the first time we talked and you did this and this and this.
Right.
And I love that because it also has allowed me to grow these great friendships and relationships.
I feel like I have something similar to that as well. Just from like when you work with clients and you're working kind of on a repeatable thing over and over and over. It's like, hey, I remember your situation. I remember the loan I did for you. I remember the situations. And obviously the more upfront you put into that and the more hard work and the relationship building you do, the easier it is. I mean, in 2007, when we started, I think we did 17 loans our first year. And I'll tell you everything about those 17 loans, like everything. And then obviously, as we get into the hundreds of loans, years and stuff like that, I don't remember them all, but the ones that you have a real relationship with, everything about. Another interesting thing about a story that you shared related to kind of evolving and being kind of in the right place, kind of at the right time. Like if your friend, for instance, John, right?
Yeah.
If he approached you, in your early on in your career, be like, it wouldn't be the right time,
wouldn't
right?
be.
It happened to be the right time at the right place with the right person. And I strongly believe that. And I mean, people are always saying like, hey, I've been telling you, we should be doing that. You should be doing this for the last 10 years. It's like, I wasn't ready for it back then, but I'm ready for it now. And, you know, you dive into the call center, which I think is a really good, you know, it might be called an entry-level job, but I actually think being on the front lines for any business is the most important, because you hear what people are talking about.
Yep.
You hear their complaints, what's there. And I think so many people are removed. And I'll relate that back to the private lending industry, because not only do we obviously run a private lending company, but we also train private lenders throughout the country. And a lot of these guys, especially the older generation that already has a lot of their own capital and they want to just deploy it responsibly, they don't want to do the heavy lifting and the hard work to do so.
No one does anymore.
And I'm like, you're jeopardizing this, because what happens is you're going to put somebody on the front lines, and then all of a sudden, you know, this is the real story. This is the next story, the next story, the next story. And then you're up here, like, it's already been watered down.
Yeah.
It's like, get on the phone, talk to people, meet people, and figure. And I'm not saying you have to do that forever, but you got it. You don't know what you don't know. You need to know what the questions are.
I've had so many conversations with people that, because my place now over the last few years has been helping and nurturing new people coming into the industry, right? And the nurturing part is just, it's listening and talking to them, but sharing, right? It's not just my story, but if you're going to do this, because we're in a different world now, right? People, as much as I don't like what I'm about to say, people don't like to put in as much of the work as they need to. They want to be able to rely on you because you've done the heavy lifting, and then I'll watch and I'll partner, but I'm not really partnering, because what I want to do is I'm just going to take some of what you've learned and then I'll run with it. And then I'll get everybody to do everything else.
Yep.
And, you know, for me, you know, the greatest thing is if you remember, as you remember these conversations and you're building these relationships, it's also holding you accountable, right? I am letting people understand that, I remember our conversations. I knew what we talked about. And while I'm doing that, they're remembering it. And that's holding me accountable for what I said at day one I was going to do to help you, to day 401 when we're working together and I'm still helping you, right? There's an accountability from a vendor side that I take very, very personal, because I want to make sure that no one has to ever feel like, hey, you know, Damon told me that was going to happen and it didn't. Like, you know, what's going on here, right?
Well, and a lot of vendors, especially sales guys, no offense, but they're always like, they're happy-go-lucky, right? And
it's like, people always say no offense when they're saying this.
Well, you know what's about to come behind that,
right? I love it. I'm fine with it.
You know, sales guys usually, and gals, is I'm here to get the sale. And then there's a lot of vendors, especially in storage, for whatever reason, the sales guys are great. And obviously I'm a I personality type, so I love them. I love sales guys. They're my favorite people in the world. In the same sense, it's like we get past the sales piece of it, and then there's nothing behind it. It's just like, oh, I passed it off. The same thing you're kind of talking about is people are trying to leverage their way up in the industry. There's nothing behind it. There's no substance behind it. It's like, okay, well, I measured up your facility to remix this area, and it takes 6 weeks to get back a remix that's not even right. And you're like, well, the sales guys told me X, and when I get to Y, we never made it to Z because the process is broken behind it. I think that's what Jason's talking about, coming up from the bottom up as you're building a company of, all right, I know when I talk to someone on the phone, I promised them this, and then I'm going to do this, and then ultimately we're going to get to this. How do I build the process all the way through? And we see a lot, you know, guys that come through and they're like, well, I got money, and they fix their problem with money, but they don't ever fix the intrinsic issue.
That's because everybody believes that everything's analytical, right? And you can just look on a spreadsheet, and you can at some level, right? But you gotta.
That's just a snapshot of a moment in time that you hope that happens.
Yeah, and there was human element involved in order to get to that place, and we can relate this to obviously self-storage. It's an easy one because there's a lot of self-storage facilities that are automatically manned, right? So, hey, I go onto this website or I make this phone call and I put in my credit card and and I get a lockbox code and I go into the facility and I'm never seeing anybody. I'm in essence,
especially in this new world we're in,
doing a task. And I think that's okay sometimes, but I also think like there's a human element because if there's 3 facilities all right next to each other, not everybody wants that. Sometimes, I always kind of talk about different ways to communicate, and not only related to the way that you want to be communicated to, but how you should communicate to somebody else. Like, I'll give you an example. So like, I like email personally. Like for me, I like it. Like, I can keep it organized that way. I don't lose track of it. I have a really good tracking system for it. It's easy to go back and forth, but not everybody else likes email. If you send me a text, I'm going to get a lot of texts.
Yep.
And I don't organize my mind by text messages or by missed calls or by other stuff. I like email. That works for me. But I recognize that other people might like text messages. They might like direct messages and social media platforms. If you're younger generation, you might like voicemail, whatever it is. You might like in-person meetings.
The new thing is Slack.
Yeah. So like, there's a lot of different things. And I think as a good business owner or salesperson, you got to relate to that particular person and to make it as easy as possible. And everyone wants to take the human element out of everything. And I want to take the human element. I want to automate everything. I want everything to be automated so I don't have to deal with anything. It's like, hey, do this, cha-ching, make money, right? Like, and if that can happen in your line of business at some point, that's great. But everyone wants to get around the human element. And it's also, we relate this to, kind of, I didn't make up this concept, but I've always had this concept of like the online to offline blend where, hey, listen, you can't just do everything offline because you'll never get anything done, right? If every conversation you had to go drive to someone, you had to talk to them in person, like there's no automation to it. But on the other side, there's a lot of automation. Everything can be done automatically. There's no human element on it, right? So you need the online offline blend. Yep. And I think the folks that can capture that the best of, hey, we do everything automatically. Okay, we have an issue. Cool. Let's pick up the phone. Let's take care of that. Let's go meet in person with them. I think that goes a long way.
Well, and that's kind of what I want to ask you, because I think we skipped over. I mean, dude, you have a pretty crazy story if you ask me in a 20-year trajectory. Like, you went from QVC when like people would sit at home and literally shop on. I mean, I can't believe my wife still watches QVC. I'm like, people still shop on TV, but okay.
My sister can tell you every working thing about QVC.
Yeah, that's
behind the scenes. It's nuts.
Yeah, and they got a pretty big spot in Westchester. But like, to hear you go, and this is only 15 years ago, and I was on RJ's podcast a couple weeks ago, and I was like, man, we're getting old back in our day, right? Like, but just 15 years ago, storage is not where it is today.
Oh no.
And when you were building a call center back there to talk about Jason's online, offline experience, I mean, back then, which is not that long ago, how were people running? Were people was it called, like, you're probably on the forefront of this whole movement.
I was talking to someone the other day about Google, and I had to do so much Google research, and I had to do Google research when we were trying to figure out how to use Google, right? Like, that's how, and I've had these moments lately with that, where it's like, look at what we've done. Like, I remember the first spreadsheet I worked at, I knew nothing about Excel. I had someone in the offices of UStore. Her name was Linda Horner, and I don't even know if she's even with him anymore, what she's doing. She gave me a 3-week course on how to do Excel spreadsheets. It's the coolest thing ever. And I'm like feeling like the dumbest human being. Like, I probably should have already known this, right?
Yeah.
So doing that was awesome and learning that. But from the call center side, seeing how the storage industry worked from that standpoint, where you'd have a call center and people would call in through getting access to the website, seeing, your rates, and then learning through the software we had at the time, the rates never, like, it was a 50-50 proposition if the rate you wanted was actually going to come up and be the rate that was supposed to be, right? So we would have those issues. So being able to have people tell you, I was looking online and I came across you stored in my area, and you're going, where did you say you're from? And you're like looking on our computer, and it's like a pop-up, and it's like, we don't even have a store there.
Yeah.
And then it pops up. It's like, we're grabbing that business, right? From an area that we might have a store for 50 miles.
Yeah. But
someone needed storage, and we were able to place ourselves at such a high level. And that's when it was like, man, the power of what you can get through using the internet. And if you're on a call center, people are not necessarily, maybe 10% are driving by and seeing a store and calling the number. A lot of them were going online, and at a time when people were still trying to learn how to do the internet. And you were just coming off of dial-up, right? And you started having like better services through your cable company.
Well, and it's interesting to think, because the REIT's business plan, and those that don't know the REITs, we're talking about the publicly traded companies. We're talking CubeSmart, Life Storage, Public Storage, Extra Space, or NSA, a couple other big ones. But their business model, for the most part, then and still today, U-Haul, is still to have people in the stores.
Yes.
So they have the people in the store, but then they're also building a call center behind it, versus what you see today, where small operators like us are coming in and saying, we can unman that store, call center only, automate. I'm just interested in do you know why U-Store was so worried about having a call center? The DMs couldn't keep up, trying to make a better sales process. What was their mindset?
It was at the time of the call center. You just needed to be able to have a better ability to talk to somebody. So, managers at the store level are so busy, and they do a lot. And, CubeSmart, they know how to run a store. I don't know as much about Life Storage, but I know Public, and they do a great job. They all do, U-Haul does a great job. I think CubeSmart, with how they train their managers, the respect that they give, and the amount of room that they give them to do their own, is amazing. And managers would often be busy, but they needed to create a plan. Let's say a manager was busy on the lot, lock checks, working with a tenant, or even if they weren't, if they just missed something. We were getting so many phone calls in, and the belief is you cannot ever have a call that does not get answered. It cannot happen, because that is business 100% of the time. And having a call center, we have 40 some people in this call center in Wayne, Pennsylvania. It's amazing. And they got so big that they moved their corporate office, and their call center is so big now, it's not at the corporate office anymore. They had to put it in their own office. That's how big their call center is, and how successful, because it just gives you a live person 100% of the time. And, talk about remotes. It's been amazing since the pandemic. The pandemic all taught us one incredible lesson, and that is that our industry is as foolproof as it can be, that we will be the demise of storage, not the industry itself, right? We make bad decisions. The pandemic taught us to trust automation, right? Trust the ability to not have a live body. But your REITs, in leading the way, are the ones who are still saying you need a warm body at some point. It might be the smallest point, but that warm body is what's going to keep that tenant coming back.
And over the phone or in person?
Over the phone, but in person,
Preferably
like even at the facility. So I think they've been able to capture both.
And I think hub and spoke is going to be the blend between the two. I think is going to be the power of the future. So, Jason and I know a lot of guys that will buy one-off stores all across the country, and we're like, well, how can you create any synergies versus us, who we have 6 stores in a 12-mile radius? And say, all right, we got one set of people all in this area. You're going to run all the stores. Then if a tenant really has a problem, they know they can drive to the one site and say, hey, I got a goddamn problem. I need to fix this now. I've called several times. I keep talking to so-and-so. I can't do this anymore. I need help. Right. And I think that goes a long way. And even in your business and my business, Jason, there's still times when you'll talk to borrowers, go meet them on site, right? Old school. You were just talking about this morning.
Front-facing operation.
Right.
You have an office with a front-facing.
You were talking about it this morning, going to lunch with other hard money lenders and borrowers again, and going back. As markets shift, I think people want that comfort level of I want to know you're real.
Here's the thing. If you're in an environment, which we've been in, I think a lot of people have been in this environment for a long period of time over the last almost decade, where the demand for business was just nonstop. And it's just over and over and over and over. And if you have a store that just is always 100% filled, always you forget the little things, right?
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, things change, economy changes. And then it's hey, we're losing tenants quicker than we're getting new people in.
Yep.
All of a sudden it's okay, well, let's get back to the basics. And I think the one issue that I can speak for, at least in the real estate investing world, is that a lot of real estate investors and real estate agents and mortgage brokers that have only been in the game for the last 8 years or so, everything's only been up.
Oh yeah, it's only been easy.
And it's not a slow and steady up. It's this up.
Hockey
and they
stick.
think that's how it's always going to be. And then all of a sudden in October 2022, a lot of things changed. interest rates went up, demand for housing, went down a little bit. And all of a sudden it's like, wait, I've closed multiple transactions every month on autopilot. And it just came down to a screeching halt. Now what?
Now what do I do?
A lot of them skipped the core fundamentals because they didn't really have time to do the core fundamentals. And you don't really blame them for it. It's like, hey, I hopped into this business and I started making money.
Yeah.
And I made more and I made more. But they better take 2, 3, 10 steps backwards and get their shit dialed in, or else they're just going to implode because they don't have the core fundamentals.
They don't. And that's where if you're successful, I always want to be careful how I say certain things, but if you're successful and you're having success, there's some intelligence there that will either allow you to continue having success or it'll come to a complete halt. And if you're not able to sit there and go, okay, let me take a step back here. Who do I know? Who can I talk to that can kind of help guide this, right? I know I'm successful. I have my business. Here's what I've done, but this is something that I need assistance on. And the companies that are going to continue to keep having success are the ones that can sit there and make the decision of, you know what? Yes, I had a management company that I was working with forever. I don't like how things are going. I want to bring this in-house because I know what I've learned and I'm going to trust me, but I also have these consultants and people that I trust that are going to help me within this. And then I'm going to solve that myself. I've been using, I hired these consulting firm and I think they're great and I've done this, but you know what? They're not helping me to this point now. I know someone else that's going to give me a hand or you just trust yourself. And that's where I'm fortunate. I started during the recession. So coming into the pandemic, I saw the fear that we had back in 08 and 09. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel very fortunate because if you're willing to step back and go, well, I know we can survive this.
Right.
How does everyone else know we can survive this? So to take it to my industry, right? So I'm a partner and a CEO of a tenant protection program. I am the mortal enemy in the program of what I did for 10 plus years with StoreSmart Bader tenant insurance, right? Because we're not insurance anymore. But I watched when it comes to insurance, a product that we would do live training. We would take trainers to a facility and train a manager, and it's all about enrollment. And we were the company that had the high success rate because we put in the man hours. We did everything from ground zero to building what we did. Well, the pandemic hits, all of a sudden you take the major strength that we have, which is the training platform, and we had to do everything virtual.
Yep.
And there was an initial fear because, well, how do you take what we've done and you do it virtually? Can it be done? Well, anything can be done if you're willing to put the time in to get it done. We were fortunate because we were already a trusted entity. People knew that we were going to do whatever we can to train you. Well, then it came to how are you going to do online sales? How is this? What if I have a kiosk? Because I'm not allowed to have. I had owners that would come to me and say, you've been telling me I need to get a website for 5-6 years, Damon, and I've always said no, and I'm scared to death. I don't know what I'm going to do now. I have 3 stores. I can't have a manager on site. I can't go meet people. I don't want to lose my business. And the response I gave was, well, we should have the discussion we had 5 years ago again, only now you have no choice.
Yep.
Either sell your stores or you're going to have to make the change. And everybody that made the change were scared to death, but not one of them came back and said, it's the worst decision I ever made. All of them came back and said, all you have to do is trust the process, which I hate that term because being in the Philadelphia market with the Sixers and not being an NBA fan and having to learn about the Sixers had the process, just trust the process as it was a sinking ship. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't like that term, but it is value because you had to trust the process, and people that did are still having success, and it taught them another business plan, something that they never would have done. And because they made that move, they are now more successful. I've seen people buying stores. Sam, I think storage asset management, in pinpointing it, the hub and spoke, I really do believe they kind of became the face of the hub and spoke because they did a 180 and just changed. And here's the kind of facilities. And, they're fortunate that the companies that they manage were buying stores up, and they had this opportunity to really kind of take the lead on that. And then you got companies like Freedom Management, Jim Mooney. Jim Mooney everybody should talk to Jim Mooney, because when it comes to how to manage multiple stores with a smaller group of people, they've done amazing. But it's because Jim trusts what he is going to do.
Yeah.
And I will tell everybody that they need to talk to Jim Mooney on that one, because he's had success. He is someone that will give you the shirt off his back, but he, with knowledge, but he has shown that it can be done.
Jim, you've been volunteered to come on the podcast, so
Yes.
that's basically what Damon's doing.
I've told him. I've told him we're going to figure this out at some point. So,
but no, man. I mean, and I think anybody could learn from that, of like how, again, figuring out how to be a good leader and managing your team and growing in the right fashion and doing things like storage is. I mean, Jason, you deal with it when you teach some of your private lenders, of like, guys are still doing shit on Excel sheets, and you're like, yo, there's TMO, there's softwares out there to help automate your business, but they're scared to do it because, you know what, the spreadsheet works, right? Yeah. And you got owners that were still taking phone calls on their cell phone during the pandemic, and you're like, dude, you could just, everyone now with the pandemic does shit online. And I agree, that's the only good thing that came out of it. I'll keep politics out of it. That is the only good thing that came out of it, is a lot of businesses automated immediately and fixed a lot of their BS processes, even from ordering food to whatever it is the benefit of it. But then there's still guys out there and gals out there that are just staying old school. But
I do like to try to understand both sides of it.
Yeah.
And I do, because it's like, I don't need a website. I don't even know what a website is. And it's like, yeah, you do. It's like,
my phone rings. I don't need it.
And it's like, I'm not getting on this Facebook thing. And it's like, yeah, it's kind of important. So again, people can choose and pick what they want to do, what direction they want to do with technology, automation, things like that. But, the point is, it's just, I do see that it's hard to get that aha moment of like, you know what, now's the time. I've been doing this the old school way. And in our business, in the hard money, private money world, when we got into this in, 06, 07, 08, around then, there was nobody, like we were in our late 20s then. There was nobody in their 20s. Like there's nobody in their 30s or 40s. It was 50, 60, 70, 80 year old rich guys that were just lending, privately. And then over the last, 10 years, all these institutions came into this space, which is probably similar to the REITs coming in the self-storage space. I don't know when they came in, but probably, similar to that. And it's like, there's a lot more capital behind this space. There's a lot more innovation, technology, and things like that. And it's like, hey, you got to do this. And I didn't start this obviously, but like we were doing YouTube videos right when YouTube came out on some of these things, and nobody had websites or any of that stuff. And then, we did our things. And then when there was institutional money behind some of these other lenders, they were really doing stuff. And then these were tech companies lending capital out that had no real estate investing or private lending experience. Time will tell what will happen with those companies, obviously, when they're, because, we've always said, how the heck can I lend in California? I don't know California. I wouldn't buy property in California. How am I going to lend someone else money in California? And, institutions come out and put algorithms in place. And I mean, we saw what happened with a lot of the iBuyers, the Zillows of the world and stuff like that, imploding in this. It's not, there's so many different components of it. And all these guys just want to get to scale and just do more. And it's like, hey, you're missing like the most important part of, you don't even know what the value of this actual asset is. That's the most important part.
A lot of the time, less is more.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to take your back to that.
Yeah.
You do.
And also, I think, and maybe not Ian, although Ian might want to be all the way up there, but I think as he gets older, he's realized it's like, yeah, maybe I don't want to be all the way up there. That like, a lot of these companies could be doing 10x, 100x, but like, what's your bottom line numbers? Because that's the only thing that matters. I don't really care if you've got $1 billion in sales. If you back that out to like a few $1 million in net profit, cool. I'd rather,
a lot of work put in to get a low return.
It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of moving pieces, and the net bottom line profit is really the most important thing. And I think a lot of people just need to have ID checks of like, what do you want? Like, is this an ego play? Do you want to put your name on buildings? And do you want to have, 300 employees that you want to manage? Like, if that's what you want to do and you want to create
more
this
power to you,
gigantic operation,
but if you don't have to, And that's having teams around you, right? Like I'm fortunate that the companies that I work with from Storage Shield standpoint, I'm very fortunate that I have my partners. John Manus and Robbie Dunn can give a master class on building a deal and getting the funding because they fine-tuned certain things, right? I think John would be another one. You guys should probably have him and Robbie, but your marketing companies who you deal with. I'm fortunate that I work with Fine View Marketing, right? Fine View Marketing, Christy Alvino, I've known a long time. And in coming into Storage Shield, we were talking, and she obviously is the only person that I wanted to work with in my marketing, but I trust her, right? I trust her team. So me knowing nothing about marketing and come up with a million ideas because, hey, Damon's a genius, right? Yeah. I can do no, because I know that's not going to work, right? And I'll end up doing way more work than I need to, and they will make me successful. And in turn, I want to make them successful. You got Pinnacle Management, right? So watching Cassie Dodgen build a management company, being able to talk to people, and if they want to be managed, I have an automatic, I can connect, but at the same time, if she's talking to people, maybe, hey, listen, we're not the right management. You need to talk to Damon, right? These are how you build your companies, right? And do I want to become the biggest? Maybe, but at what cost, right? I worked with an insurance program that we were the number one insurance program for a very long time. And I've watched the company that I work with not be the same company because now they're owned by a big corporate and, private money and big money and all this. And, you look at it one of two ways, right? And for me, the answer was, I jump around a lot, guys. I should have.
Oh, no, you're good.
One. The answer for me was, I need to make a change for Damon because their future is not who I see as my future. And they're not who I see that I want to become, right? Yep. And I work in an industry that's odd. Like I worked from tenant insurance to tenant protection. We're one of the few programs that you don't invest money in. Like, think about that. Like I went from just growing and making people revenue. You're not investing money in these products, right? So,
yeah, I think just to take a second it wouldn't be fair if we didn't discuss what your company does, and for people to understand it, non-storage investors that could understand what is tenant insurance. We could skip or tenant protection. We could talk a little bit about the protection insurance, but like what you're talking about of this is an ancillary customer service product that we offer to all of our tenants. Like, can you kind of explain a little bit about what you guys actually do?
So every owner operator, you're trying to find ways to bring in revenue value. How am I going to, you got to think about it. If you're someone who's investing in deals and you're buying facilities, you have to be able to look at things and go, well, what's going to help me get my funding? What's going to help me in dealing with a bank? What's going to help me add value to what I'm doing? And it's these products. And, it's not just box sales, because I don't know how I feel about box sales half the time, depending upon who you talk. There's not one consistent person across the board that'll say, yeah, selling boxes are great. Boxes and lockers are going to make you a ton of money. They will if done correctly, but you want that residual, right? So you have programs like insurance and tenant protection. I mean, go back to when we started with tenant insurance. We had an insurance company. I won't say who they are. We bought them in 2019, but I won't say who they are. That were the epitome of everybody disliked them. Why? Because they were around a long time. And the way they were handling business was not well accepted across the board in storage. And people had more negative to say than positive. Now, why is that? They probably did make a lot of mistakes and the service may not have been there, but it was because they were the largest insurance company in the industry. People needed to realize that, right? Anybody who is the largest is going to be taxed the most. That's why people, whenever they say public, usually the term elephant in the room comes in right along with it. Why? Because they are the largest storage, company in the industry. It's Storable, the same thing. Now, Storable has made mistakes. We all know that. And I have a lot more people that are unhappy with kind of how they've done things than they are. But guess what? They are the largest and they have all the products that people want to work with right now and have faith in. So guess what people are going to do? Maybe they don't want to be dictated to on who they're going to do business with, but they own the right to be able to say what they want when you're working with their company. That has to be respected at some point, right? Do I have differences with them? Sure. Right. But I'm going to, because I'm an ex-employee and I had a large book of business and I'm now, I'm not really the enemy. I have no enemies, I think, in general, but it's, the joke is I'm the enemy of them, right? It's not that case. I have sent them business. Why? Because I believe in the product, right? I may not agree with how things are being done, but that's my opinion. I left the company because I didn't agree with certain things. That's okay, right? I still have great respect for what they've built. All right. Behind the scenes, maybe I'll say something. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But so what people need to understand is when it comes to insurance or protection, these are the products that you have to understand what you're getting into. The problem that I have with insurance, and I was part of the problem. I mean, because I would sell fear. The fear of you got to be licensed and you got to do this and you have to do that. And if you're not, the state can come in and you can get fined and then we'll get fined. And these things that are subtle, but when you add them up, they become large. And then when someone's trying to get insurance for their tenants and get their tenants to take it so that it protects their goods, so that the risk of loss is not on the shoulders of an owner operator, just the steps that they would take become very frustrating, when in fact is you want to make sure if your lease says something to the effect of, I am not responsible for your goods, you have to have some type of insurance on file. It's not because you're trying to be a bully. It's because I am not going to be responsible to have to pay out loss on your belongings and have to go through my insurance. I'm not going to be the face of a claim. If done correctly, a tenant will have their goods protected. The owner will not have to deal with the risk of liability and being part of a claim. The byproduct of everything is the amount of revenue that can be made in an insurance or a tenant protection product. And, on a great example is we have a facility that we're bringing in. It's 152 units. Never had insurance, never had protection. So we're getting involved with the protection standpoint because I do my protection program a little different than how the industry's done. We've talked about it. I am more customer service. We are very much a transfer of risk program, which is a little unheard of in the tenant and protection side of the industry. But what we've done is we have this client, they're coming in 155 unit facility. And just by following certain steps, and you have to trust the company you're working with. So as a vendor, if someone says, listen, you're going to need to make sure every one of your tenants is addressed, has to understand that they're either providing this proof or they're going to take it. And if they do that, they're going to have 70% of their business. So you look at a 155 unit facility, and if you can have 70% of them, I mean, you're making $400 or $500 a month.
Yeah.
In revenue. Well, how much am I putting out of pocket? Nothing.
None. The customer's
Nothing.
paying for it.
The customer's paying for it. And you are making that residual each and every month. Well, all of a sudden, now you've got an extra, 5,000 to 6,000, and you add that. So all of a sudden you buy 5 stores, right? You got 1,000, 1,200 insured tenants over, let's say 2,700. All of a sudden you're bringing in, $6,000 a month.
I believe our implementation is net $8,000 a month, I think is what we figured out. It was an additional $100,000 a year across the portfolio.
Across from everything.
And that again was, we can get in, this is another conversation for another time, of making sure if you have a manager, if you have someone in place, that it's actually being implemented the way it's supposed to. And yeah, you're forcing it, but it's not actually being enforced, this forced insurance. And it's not really what it is the sales pitch to the customer of, we're doing this to protect your goods and we're protecting ourselves. So there's no he said, she said at the end of this. And most customers are like, you know what? I never thought about that. Thank you.
What is it typically cost per unit?
$12 for 2,500. That should be your average. That should be your average. And I mean, that's a good 96% of all policies that are taken. I've gone down to slim down. We only offer 4 different premiums. So it comes down to what you're able to do. And on my side, the frustrating thing about what I'm doing now is, from tenant protection, you have 2 types of programs. You have a wholesale, which is really what it always used to be. And what I fought against from an insurance is it's how it's directed, because owner operators become part of the claim. You make decisions if a claim's paid or not. I mean, you're working as the face of loss, which you've done all these steps. You've written in your lease that you're not responsible. You've built your asset, and then you go and you become part of this. The nice thing is, if you're willing to take the initial, call it a hit, be the face, whatever, the protection companies that are dealing with their insurance programs are taking care of the loss. So as you are doing this, you actually are going to be able to work with your insurance company.
Yep.
The insurance side of the industry, they just had a webinar on Monday. The talking point is still all about regulations and states, and you have to get licensed. And if you get licensed, you're backed by the state, which is great. If you are someone who firmly believes that, hey, listen, I do not want to be responsible, and I like knowing that I have a state supporting and backing me.
Yeah, and there's only one state in the union right now that requires it, and it's New Mexico, I believe.
Yeah, New Mexico right now, we're not allowed to actually offer a tenant protection program. And what typically happens in these situations is the company did something that a storage company did something that they probably shouldn't have. Something was said, it got to the wrong person, and then that, as a domino effect, got back to the state, and someone within the state said, this is happening in our backyard. Like, I was just told that I had to do this and I had to do that, and I don't know if that's legal. And then you connect the dots, and if that were to ever get appealed, I would assume, and this is just my opinion, I would assume that it would then go from where you can offer it, because right now what they're saying is protection is like insurance and you need a license, and the insurance industry is hanging their hat on this. This is what's so weird. It's very much like high school, right? Like now this is the clique, the populars, the quote unquote insurance industry, and they don't want this to happen, and they're going to do what they can to make sure that you can't. But what it comes down to is the insurance industry being highly regulated. I think there's 40 states, maybe more now, that require a limited license to be able to offer an insurance product over the counter. And that sounds great and it sounds awesome until you deal with some of the states. California is the most expensive, takes a long time. New York, when I left the insurance side, it was a 4 to 5 month wait to get a license approved in the state of New York. And they were always making changes in the brochure. Texas was a 3 or 4 month wait. Florida, a couple month wait. So it was these different things that became frustrating to have to deal with. So when you deal on protection, I already knew all this, but what I didn't know was how you can run a protection. Like, I'm not a wholesale program. I am actually a company, and I never knew this. Like, you can run a protection program in a high customer service way, and you can do it where I can transfer the risk, like we're doing with you. We are transferring the risk of the claim loss back to Storage Shield, so that owner operator, like, you aren't even allowed to make a decision. If a claim comes to you, guess what you're doing? You are going to send it to our company. Why? Because to me, the service side, that's how it happens better, because I did insurance. I understand what goes on in claims. Maybe I wasn't in the middle of claims on insurance, but I understand the process. And if something negative and we had to tell a customer that something wasn't covered, guess who had to handle that? Me. Right. And when doing that, you start to understand the relationship that goes into this between the owner and the vendor, but you understand what's going on with the tenant as well, because the managers are going to tell you. So I wanted to have a program that was more beneficial to the industry, and that no one's going to come to us and say, hey, Damon lied. Why? Because I am high transparency, and ethically, you're not getting it. I might have companies in my industry that will tell you whatever, and will call you 6 times, and will try to hide and bait and switch and all that in their agreements. That's not what we do. And that is what I think is important in this industry, because as I'm coming on telling people I'm going to make you revenue, I'm going to help add value to, at a 7% cap, right, to your portfolio, you have to make sure that I'm handling things on my end appropriately. So yeah, that's my soapbox for the moment. That's pretty much what I'm going to give.
No, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer, and it's it's similar to when it's part of the subscription model. It's we should probably do it more in our multifamily stuff. We don't, because there is renters insurance that should probably be more required, and there's, as you get more sophisticated or bigger in this operation, you can set up your own captives, and it's a great revenue stream. I was talking to Public Storage at one of the shows. Their person that runs their tenant insurance division, dude, we're talking about $180 million a year they're making.
Public Storage, when I was with Store at CubeSmart, at a national event, I'd never seen this happen, and I just went, well, that's probably why people don't like them. One of the officers or an operations or district got up in the middle of a national trade show. They were talking about revenue and goes, oh yeah, we just had a quarter where we brought in like $1.5 million, dollars in $1.5 million in insurance revenue. Yeah. You guys all have to be doing this. And I look at the room and you're seeing people just be like, what? Yeah. Like, but public storage was smart. Well, in general, they've been around a long time. They're obviously smart, but creating their own management company and following that up and creating their own tenant insurance, I think is brilliant for them as a company. I don't know how much new business they're going to get, but in-house to have that,
it's a no-brainer. You're talking about $180 million of float capital a year, dude. I mean, we're talking, it's not no wonder they can buy shit. No wonder they can go force life storage and say, I'm going to come buy you at a 4 cap or something insane, So
it's amazing.
But I don't, dude. The live ones are the best ones because a couple of weeks ago we had title in here and everyone's like, "Oh, the fuck, you can talk about title? Like, how's that going to go?" It was great. And like tenant insurance, like, "Oh, we can talk about tenant." This was awesome, man.
Tenant protection.
Tenant
No,
protection.
this is what happens. Everyone connects them. I mean, and I love it. I mean, the best way you can think about tenant protection is like a warranty. Only we actually pay
the warranty.
I love the warranty connection. Oh, so yeah, you got to buy a TV and they're going to give you a 1 year with the time, but then you're going to get a warranty that's only going to give you 11 months more. What's covered? Well, nothing. Yeah, we're not that.
No, I bought a set of cables at Best Buy the other day. They're like, "Do you want to buy the warranty?" I'm like, "For what? No,
for what?
No,
it's free money to Best Buy. That's all I could think. I'm like, I know what you guys are doing. I got
for $2.17. You can get a warranty, or I can just come in and buy a new set of cables.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, we gotta give a shout out to your wife about the shoes. For those of you that are watching.
So
David
my wife,
shoes.
was so excited because being able to get out and able to get out and speak. I have wanted to do for a long time, and I love it because I just knowledge and sharing knowledge is important to me, and just to help people better understand things. So I had to practically beg in my former company because they didn't want you to put yourself out there and put too much time in speaking, and it has always kind of come easy to me. But it's because I love it. I love sharing. I love sharing with people. And she has been so proud because I've spoken a lot this year, and she was so excited for, "Hey, Damon, I think it's so great you're doing a podcast. You've talked about wanting to do it, and you've talked about Ian, and this is great." And she goes, she goes, "I found these shoes that you haven't worn in a long, and I think they would look great." I'm like, "You did what?" She goes, "So she found these shoes we've had. I haven't worn them in a long time." And she goes, "I think they would look good for your outfit." And I go, "My outfit is a pair of jeans, a vest, and a ball cap." I go, "I don't think I need them." And I kind of hurt her feelings, and I went, "You know what? I'm going to wear the shoes." So my wife always looking out. She is my biggest fan, and she, again, her telling me when I was saying I'm not going to work for storage, her going, "You need to get over yourself. You have always said you'll listen to every opportunity. What makes you any better than this?"
There you go.
What got me to finally make the decision to work storage. So I appreciate it. I know I have a tendency to ramble, but I can talk about it. It's probably good we didn't get into any protection insurance till the end, because I could literally talk about this for a couple hours and put you to sleep. But it's important. What we do is important.
But I think people need to understand that the relationship is equally as important, and your story is so good. And that's like how we connected initially. It's, look, like you said you talked to a lot of people about, like, you talk for 15 minutes and then 2 minutes about the real stuff. And honestly, we all know the real stuff is relatively simple. It's, I want to deal with someone I can pick up. Like, you've come up to our buddy Mikey's spot, the golf Clubhouse 54, the golf studio, and supported that. And I was like, well, we're going to support you in your business. And we appreciate that. One question we ask all of our guests is there a podcast or book? I don't know if you're a podcast or a book guy. Is there a podcast or book that's either changed your life or that you think everyone should read, or something that you're into right now?
I would tell you, I like watching videos of him and then reading Simon Sinek.
He's good.
One of the quotes that I've always admired is, people, they don't buy, what you do, they buy who you are. And it's also been said that they don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And the why you do it was always important, because that's been part of my story forever. Like, I do this because I want to help, and I do this because I love it. And, anything he does, I usually like. I'm becoming a big fan of Jordan Peterson. Politically, and just because I think the guy is a genius, and he's getting attacked so much, but his views, if you take a step back and listen, the guy is pretty spot on, and he talks to you, not at you. And I think that's important.
Him and Simon both just take out very simple concepts and get you to conceptualize it. And no matter where you are in your life, who you are, what you do, they're just very simple concepts. And they're like, "Hey man, you ever think about this?" And you're like, "God damn it." Like, but that's what we all need. We need to be challenged, right?
You have to be challenged.
So, Damon, where's the best people they can find you if they just want to call and say hi? Because we know you'll talk, but more importantly, they actually want tenant protection for the storage facility.
You can reach me. My phone number is 717-870-9572. If you cannot get hold of me, text me or leave a message. I will give anybody my time. Email address is damon@storage-shield.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn. www.storage-shield.com is our website. And you can find me at almost any event. But if you got anybody who's listening to this, if you have any questions ever, I try to be an open book. I will give my time. I will share my connections. If I don't have an answer, then I will make sure I help. And if I can just give one bit of advice to people who are looking at storage and are looking at programs like what I do. And this is something I've learned more and more over the last couple of years. People will tell you a lot. Hold a salesperson accountable. If they're making big promises, you hold them to it. If they give you an agreement, read it. And that sounds so common sense, but I find in agreements with these programs, they don't get read. And if you're not careful, you will have things like someone throwing in a non-compete in an agreement that says you're not allowed to work for another program. Or the biggest thing now that I find that is, and this is why I wanted to mention this, the new thing is I'm going to pay you this admin or profit sharing number, but you have to sign a 3-year agreement. If you take one thing away from what I say on any advice, do not sign long-term agreements when it comes to protection or tenant insurance. Why? Once you realize that they don't have your best interests in mind, once you realize that they're not giving you service, once you realize anything, you cannot get out of those agreements or they're going to charge you a hefty fee. So if they're telling you, let's say in insurance, which was unheard of, I'm going to pay you 60% admin fee, right? Unheard of because of legal implications. Well, now the insurance industry across the board is offering it like it's candy, right? Because they want to compete with tenant protection programs. If that happens, that same admin fee will be there on a 12-month agreement. All you have to do is tell them. So please, for your own sake, for revenue, for value, it's going to help you in the long run. If you have any questions on the warnings, call me. So thank you for letting me share that.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely. This has been great. Certainly appreciate you coming down.
I appreciate it. This is fun.
You know, I learned a bit. You as well, and I'm sure all our listeners and viewers did as well. So again, thanks everyone for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve podcast, and we'll see everybody next week.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for tuning in.